Senator Paterson.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister for Employment, Senator Cash, and I'm interested to follow up issues we were discussing in question time yesterday. Can the Minister further update the Senate about recent reports concerning donations to registered organisations which appear to show a conflict of interest?
The Minister for Employment, Senator Cash.
Thank you, Mr President, and I thank Senator Paterson for his question. Yesterday, in question time, I raised questions about the clear conflict of interest that the current Leader of the Opposition, Mr Shorten, had when the superannuation fund for which he was a director, Australian Super, paid tens of thousands of dollars to the union he controlled, the AWU, coincidentally in the year that Mr Shorten was running for election to the federal parliament. Today, we see further reports and further questions raised about these dealings. At the 11th hour and 10 years after the fact, the AWU has now expressed an intention to amend the description of this payment. However, Mr President, no matter how it is described, the opposition leader has failed to explain just how he managed what are clear conflicts of interest in this situation. I know yesterday that Mr Shorten told the House no rules were broken, no conflict existed. Mr President, a conflict of interest clearly exists when a person wears three hats, when he has duties to both the hard-working Australians whose retirement savings were held by Australian Super and to the union members at the AWU, and at the same time money is changing hands. What Mr Shorten has failed to explain is exactly how he dealt with this conflict. Did he remove himself from the deliberations by Australian Super about such payments? As head of the AWU, did he disclose his interest on receiving it? Did he request the payment personally himself, or did someone do it on his behalf? Mr Shorten needs to explain.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Paterson, a supplementary question.
Yes, thank you, Mr President. Can the Minister inform the Senate why it is important that we have greater transparency in how money flows into and out of registered organisations?
Order on my left. Senator Cash. Minister.
Thank you, Mr President. Australian Super holds the retirement savings of hard-working Australians on trust. Its directors have a special duty to put these interests of working Australians above all other interests. Australians need to have confidence that their superannuation savings are being held for their retirement, not paid to unions for partisan purposes. As I mentioned yesterday, over $53 million has been paid by industry superannuation funds to unions over the past 10 years. Over the same period, nearly $65 million has been paid by unions to the Australian Labor Party. So, Mr President, payments from industry superannuation funds account for an amount equivalent to 82% of the funds paid by unions to the Labor Party. We need to ensure Australians have faith in their super funds.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Paterson, final supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. Can the Minister inform the Senate how the government is proposing to address the problem of a lack of transparency?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr President. Well, people's life savings should not be bankrolling political movements. This government's registered organisations legislation is a significant step in ensuring that registered organisations are transparent in the same way as companies are transparent. We also have critical legislation in the parliament to prevent corrupting and secret payments between registered organisations and employers, and full disclosure of legitimate payments that are made. The AWU's decade-long delay in properly disclosing, and now at the 11th hour trying to reclassify a payment from Australian Super to Mr Shorten's union, and Mr Shorten's refusal to acknowledge the clear conflict of interest that arises in this context, quite frankly, only raises further questions. Mr Shorten needs to explain how he dealt with these clear conflicts.
Thank you, Minister.